Welcome to Under One Roof MTL, where we are demystifying home ownership one episode at a time. Thrilled to be back. Happy New Year to LJ Aguinaga from LJ Realties. Happy New Year, LJ.
How you doing?
Fantastic. Martin Spalding from Fred and Martin Mortgages. Happy New Year to you as well, good sir.
2025. Can you believe it?
No kidding. Okay, guys, let's start with the trivia question of the week since we're coming off the trivia show. This one is brought to you by Felix and Norton Cookies. You can visit their store at the Blue Haven Shopping Center, 3705 St. John's Boulevard in DDO. If you think you know the answer, 514-790-0800. And the first person to text in with the correct response gets cookies delivered straight to their door. Yum. Our question this week: what is the name of the federal program that helps first-time homebuyers save for a down payment through a tax-free savings account? If you think you know the answer, 514-790-0800, and do include your name as well. All right, we have a lot of stuff to get to, guys. We've only been off for a couple of weeks, but there has been a lot of things that have changed since we last spoke. So I thought maybe we could take a look, first of all, at what we're expecting from real estate and mortgages in 2025. So, Martin, why don't we start with you? What are we expecting from, we'll start with maybe fixed rates, because that seems to be the biggest question mark right now because of the bond market, correct?
Well, before we get started, there was talk about of an award that Robyn was up for an award, and we want to hear more about this award. What happened?
I ended up winning.
So, what is the award exactly? It's digital marketing, but what is the name of the award?
Yeah, so I won a Canadian Choice Award for digital marketing agencies, making me #1 in Quebec, which is fun. So excited. This is what's the best part about this award is your clients are the ones that nominate you. So that's really, really cool. I like that, the people that I work with are happy with the service that they're receiving. So, let's keep these good times going in 2025.
Amazing.
All right. So, back to your question. So, I thought we would go back in time because we made some predictions in the beginning of 2024, and he's not with us, but the guy who predicted things the most accurately was Fred. So we all were sitting back going, how much will the overnight rate or the bank rate go down in 2024? And the person who was the most bullish of the four of us was Fred, and he only predicted 1 point or 100 basis points. And it actually went down 1.75 or 175 basis points. And we saw 5 cuts starting in June into December. And now we're sort of sitting back going, okay, what's going to happen in 2025? And so if you ask me what's going to happen in 2025, well, the next occasion where the Bank of Canada can lower its rates is on January 29th. And I think that we're going to go down again by 25 basis points. So now coming back to your original question, obviously when the Bank of Canada rate goes down, it has a direct effect on variable rates, but it doesn't necessarily touch fixed rates. And from what I've been reading and from what I've been seeing, it's a mixed bag because this week we saw fixed rates actually coming down for no particular reason. But most pundits are saying because of what's going on south of the border, and what's going on in our economy, that fixed rates are probably not going to move that much in 2025. It may go down slightly, but not significantly. Certainly not at the clip that we're predicting that variable rates will go down. So I've always been a fixed rate type of person. So all the mortgages I've ever had have been fixed rates. But if I was to get a mortgage today, I would go variable. And I would go variable because I think that in 2025, we're going to see the Bank of Canada lower its, call it the overnight rate, by 100 basis points. So 1 full point from where it is today. And I don't think it's going to have that effect. It will have that effect on variable rates, but it won't have that effect on fixed rates. But I want to hear what LJ has to say on the matter because he always has some really good insight. And one thing before I pass it to LJ, and I know I'm chewing up a lot of time here, but you gotta follow him on Instagram because some of his posts, all his posts are great, but a couple of the last posts I saw are so on target, so in today's world and so accurate that it's worth your while to follow LJ on Instagram. Okay, over to you, LJ. I'm sorry for chewing up so much time.
Thank you very much for the introduction. I really appreciate it. We put a lot of effort into all of our social media and all the video content, so I really do appreciate the shout out. Our team works tirelessly on it, and I'm a big part of that as well. In terms of my predictions for where we're going to head, fixed versus variable, let's start off with a fixed rate. So, Martin, can you agree that roughly an insured 5-year rate is about 4.2 and a conventional is about 4.5? Is that what we're seeing in the market still?
Yeah, it's funny. I saw some 439, and I've been hearing some low fours for insured. So it's low
Okay.
fours, mid fours.
So, to touch on fixed, where do I think we're going to head from here? I think that if things continue in the way that we're expecting it, I suspect that that insured 5-year rate will probably get to about 3.5 in that range. And I expect that the conventional one will probably be closer to that 380, 385 range, which I still think is quite a bargain compared to some of the rates we've been seeing, obviously, over the last 24 months. In terms of the variable, where do I see that heading? Now, I think we're all kind of licking our lips, really excited about that extra 100 basis points. And from everything we're reading, it seems to be the case. I know that we keep talking about how there's probably a recession going on, but for whatever the reason, nobody's talking about it. We see unemployment is starting to creep up. We see a lot of writing on the wall. If that does happen, I think 100%, we're going to see the overnight rate go down because we're going to try and make the economy more active and start seeing a lot more action in the economy in general. So I think 100 basis points is a great bet at this point in time. I think last year I would have again repeated my 50 to 75 basis points, but after the year that we had last year and the way things are shaping up right now, I feel pretty confident about saying at 100 basis points is what we have in store for 2025.
If you're currently sitting on a variable rate mortgage, at what point should you consider switching over to a fixed rate mortgage?
That's a great question because I think that by June and July, all the cuts will have taken place, and I think that we're going to bottom out. And if you want the security of knowing exactly how much you're going to pay on a monthly basis, if as I mentioned before, if I was to sign today, I would sign variable. But because I'm a fixed rate type of person, I would probably lock in June or July, once those 75 to 100 basis points have been cut from the overnight rate. So that's when I would lock in.
It sounds like if we do get to where I expect that 5-year rate will be in that kind of 3.5 range, 3.8 range, and the variable will probably get to that about as well. Because today, if the prime rate's at 545 minus 100 basis points, that would put us to 445 minus roughly the 95 basis point discount that most institutions are giving you when you take a variable rate on a 5-year term, you'd be right around that 3.5 rate. So it sounds, Martin, that if we were to get to that point in time, you would lock it up and put it on a fix because you've gone as far down as you're happy to go and don't want to risk any more at that point.
Yeah, that's where I would go. And once we're down 75, 100 basis points, that's when I would lock in.
LJ, I do want to take a look at Montreal house price expectations. I know that home prices continued to creep up, but now that interest rates have come down, I imagine people are ready to shop, ready to buy. So, what are you expecting for 2025?
So it's very interesting because our market, I'd say, is pretty different than the rest of Canada right now. Montreal had some of the largest rental growth last year. And in terms of pricing, we did not have anywhere near as much of the increases that other markets have been seeing. And it really does sound like a lot of the other Canadian markets have topped out. Opposed to where we're at in Montreal, it seems like I think there's still a decent amount of run rate. I would not be surprised if this year we saw another 8% appreciation over the course of the year. And 8% is quite staggering, right? When we look at a home at $500,000, I'm talking about increasing about $40,000. That is very significant. But I do believe that that's probably going to be the case of what we're going to see right now because this week, I've always said that real estate Montreal is asleep until January 15th. That has been the norm. And the amount of phone calls that I received January 2nd, January 3rd from people saying, "Hey, are you back in the office? I'm ready to start making a move. I want to start planning my year. Real estate's ready to go. What are you doing?" The calendar invites that I had to meetings. This year's different. This year's gonna be special. And it means that if you are considering it, I highly recommend you get in touch with Fred Martin. Start planning your pre-approval stage if you are looking to buy. If you're looking to sell and buy, feel free to reach out to me. I'd be more than happy to have a whole consultation with you, whether you're considering making a move in the next 9 days or the next 9 months. It doesn't matter. Let's discuss what your options are so you can be the most informed when the time comes.
If you're ready to jump into the market, give LJ a call, 514-500-4040. Coming up, what is a VTB mortgage? We're going to find out on our Mortgage Minute after we check traffic at the CJD 800 Traffic Center.
What is a vendor take back mortgage? This is your Mortgage Minute. A vendor take back mortgage, VTB, is a financing arrangement where the seller of a property lends money to the buyer for part or all of the purchase price. The buyer makes regular payments, including interest, directly to the seller under negotiated terms. A vendor take back mortgage can serve as a first or second rank mortgage and can offer more flexibility, helping buyers who may not qualify for full financing from traditional lenders. Sellers benefit by earning interest and attracting more buyers. Both parties, however, should seek legal and financial advice to structure the agreement properly to mitigate potential risks and or liabilities.
You're listening to Under One Roof MTL on CJD 800. I'm Robyn Flynn. That's Martin Spalding. And that's LJ Aguinaga. We are with you until 1 p.m. I want to talk about what a VTB mortgage is. Now, Martin, you gave us a quick overview just now on the Mortgage Minute, but let's dive in a little bit more. So, a vendor take back mortgage, we now know what it is, but how does it really work and who benefits from this?
We heard a quick definition during the Mortgage Minute. So basically, how it works is the seller is the lender. So the seller provides the financing directly to the buyer. This is done through a mortgage agreement registered against the property. So far, pretty much like if you were going to a financial institution. The buyer makes regular payments to the seller, both principal and interest, similar to a traditional mortgage. The negotiated terms, the interest rate, the prepayment schedule, the term of the loan are negotiated between the buyer and the seller. And those may differ than those that you'd find in a regular financial institution or a bank and can be more flexible depending on who's more motivated between the two. It can be a first rank or a second rank. So if the buyer already has some financing but doesn't quite have enough, the seller can subsidize them by offering them a second rank mortgage. So for buyers, it's easier access to financing if they don't qualify for the full amount with a traditional lender or traditional bank. More flexible terms compared to most banks. For the seller, it can attract more buyers because there are some regions in Quebec that lenders just don't want to go. These isolated cottages in the middle of nowhere, it's risky for financial institutions. So maybe the seller will have to then pony up the financing for the buyer if he wants to sell his property. Another advantage for the seller is the seller now can actually earn interest on the money that he's lending to the buyer. But there are always risks, right? So for the buyer, the interest rate will probably be higher because the risk is in the seller's court. And for the buyer, if he doesn't make his payments, a seller will quickly foreclose on the seller and take back his property. Whereas banks will be a little bit more lenient. For the seller, there's the risk that the buyer is going to default. And also for the seller, his funds are tied up in the loan. So it's not a pure sale. So if he's trying to get, let's say he's got a property selling for 300,000 and he's lent the guy or the girl $100,000, he can only take 200,000 and he's got to leave 100,000 behind. So if he's planning to buy a house for another 300,000, there might be a shortfall there. But before you engage in these things, we highly, highly recommend that you seek legal advice and that you consult a financial professional. Because in the time that Fred and I have worked together, we have done one of these deals. One. And I'm going to throw it over to LJ because I'm sure LJ has been exposed to some of these, but these are very rare, especially in greater Montreal. You rarely see these things. It's more on the outskirts or in regions where financing is more difficult to obtain.
So I've seen two of them, and another verbiage for this would be a balance of sale. Sometimes you hear it described as that, and I've done it on two properties. Both of them were investment type properties. I was actually offered one this week. We're talking about a property that's listed at about 1.6, 1.7, and in our negotiation, the vendors actually came back to us and said, "Hey, if you want to get you closer to our price, we're happy to give you $100,000 in the form of a balance of sale or a vendor take back at a rate of 4%, actually." And I found that super interesting because I found that to be super low. Like Martin said before, typically in these scenarios, I'm expecting a rate of at least 6.5 to 8%. That's kind of what you're looking at. It's really a lot more aligned with a private loan. And like Martin mentioned, there's obviously some risks, there's some differences associated to this. But there's also some opportunity. If you are a vendor and you do not need the liquidity today, well, you get to continue to make interest on the funds that you've actually effectively taken on the sale. And you, if for whatever reason the buyer does not actually honor their obligation, you get to take the property back. So if you're somebody who does not need the liquidity, does not need the capital, and are just looking to move some money around and shift some responsibility, this could be a very interesting option for you. It's something that we don't see a ton of in Canada. We do hear a lot more about it in the US because I guess just the sheer volume of things, but it is an opportunity that might lay out there, and it's definitely worth investigating or at least having a phone call with a few people to discuss. And we see this a bit with families, I'd say. You can obviously see with families sometimes that being set up when you want to pass a property within the family from one person to another. That's another interesting situation where we can see this from time to time.
That's exactly what I was gonna ask, is the way that Martin laid it out, it sounded like something like if your parents wanted to sell you their house and they were kinda cutting you a deal, giving you a break, and that's why I was surprised that you said that the interest rates are usually higher because I imagine, like, if I had to negotiate a loan with my mom, she'd probably give me a below average interest rate, right? So, I think this would be an interesting option for families, but as you said, it's extremely rare. Consult legal advice, consult with a financial advisor to make sure that you're protecting both the vendor and the buyer at the same time. Now, to find out more about your options, if you are interested in purchasing a home, your mortgage is up for renewal, get in touch with Fred and Martin. You can do that at fredandmartin.com. Still to come, how will global politics shape the real estate market right here in Montreal? We'll discuss after the news. Welcome back to Under One Roof MTL. I'm Robyn, that's Martin, and that is LJ. Ooh, the political landscape has been spicy for the last month, shall we say. Whether you're looking here at home in Canada with our Prime Minister Justin Trudeau announcing he was stepping down as leader of the Liberal Party, which means we're definitely going to have a new Prime Minister at some point this year. We've
I'm
got
sorry, Robin,
Donald
you mean the governor? The governor.
the governor.
The governor has stepped out.
Yeah, and apparently Canada is about to become the 51st US state. If you listen to Donald Trump, who really, really seems to want to annex Canada, and he's about to take office in 8 days. So, with Donald Trump taking office, Justin Trudeau stepping down, there are a variety of conflicts across the globe. Ukraine, Russia war still ongoing, significant unrest in the Middle East. Whenever these kinds of things are happening, whether or not they're happening here in Canada, they affect us. Martin, what do you think this impact is going to be? Now, first of all, do you think Canada is going to become part of the United States? Because I really hope not, but I'm starting to get nervous.
No, I don't think so. I think Canada will remain Canada and the United States will remain the United States. I think we'll still remain the most significant trading partners in North America. I think that if tariffs are tabled, it's going to hurt both our economies. But, Trump has made that promise leading up to his election, and he's going to impose, I don't think he's going to impose 25%, but there will certainly be some tariffs imposed. I think that we have to be concerned about his deportation. If I was an immigrant, undocumented in the United States, and I had the choice of going to Mexico or Canada, I'd probably go north. So, as much as Trudeau has decided to cut our quotas in terms of how many immigrants we're going to accept, I think that our borders are going to bleed if Trump decides to do what he promised to do during the election, leading up to his election.
Now, the cost of goods could also increase. You mentioned these tariffs that Trump is threatening to impose, but I've already heard talks of retaliatory tariffs from Canada on things like American steel orange juice, if you're somebody who likes to drink a glass of orange juice every morning to start your day, it might be difficult because it's not like we grow our own oranges here in Canada, right? We need them from Florida. So, I think one lesson that I think is important to take away here is I hear a lot of people when referring to Donald Trump just saying, "Oh, I'm so glad I'm not American. I'm so glad he's not the leader of our country." But what happens south of the border, LJ, impacts not just our orange juice, but the cost of our houses too.
It impacts everything, right? As Martin highlighted, we are the largest trading partners in North America, and everything that we do affects the other side. Now, Justin Trudeau stepping down seems a little bit untimely in the sense that had we gone for the vote of non-confidence, which seemed like it was coming, we'd move forward with an election a little bit quicker. And it almost feels like we're in a purgatory right now, waiting for that next decision before we can go to the election. So we're almost in a holding pattern for the next 3 to 4 months, which isn't going to help us. Be able to negotiate much with the US, right? And the US is going to be coming in hot for negotiations. I believe the free trade agreement is going to be brought back to the table in the next year or so. And they're going to want to start pushing all of these buttons. And the idea of them annexing Canada to the US, I mean, can you blame them? We're all amazing in Canada, right? I would want to take over Canada as well if I was part of them. So I'm here for it. I think it's part of Donald's posturing, if you will. So he's really doubling down on it on social media. I was at a visit earlier this week and it was kind of all over the place. That's what was being discussed. But is it going to happen? No, I don't believe it. That'll be the case. It seems to be the only thing that all of our political leaders are on the same page about, that will never happen. So I'm not particularly concerned about that. In terms of what actual effects will we be seeing in the Canadian real estate market, well, there's just a lot of unknowns, and I think that's really the point to underline here with the unrest in the Middle East between Russia and Ukraine. I mean, we can go into every single economical aspect of it in the sense that, I mean, I believe gas has been cut off from Russia to most of Europe. I know that earlier last year, when there was the initial unrest in the Middle East, some of the shipping cargoes was being stopped due to the Yemenis, and thus we were seeing container prices go up. We were seeing a large impact on that, and obviously, who eats those costs? Well, the consumer. Whenever the cost of bringing goods over is going to be more expensive, companies need a bottom line to operate. They're not going to be doing this for free, and thus costs are just simply going to go up, and the consumer is going to absorb that. So, across the board, what are we expecting? It sounds like costs are going to go up. What are we going to do with interest rates? Well, if we're in a pickle, what we do every time is we reduce interest rates to try and push the economy forward. So, based on everything we're reading, based on everything we're seeing, it seems like that is going to be the case. The big question is, how much is unemployment going to play a role in this? What impact is it going to have? And will people be able to afford their current lifestyle, the lifestyle that they want moving forward? How are we going to make these things happen? So, until we solve our supply issue in Canada, I expect prices to continue to go up, even with that unemployment, because the reality is people need somewhere to live. And whether it's rental prices jumping up at a staggering rate or simply the cost of homes, that seems to be the direction we're heading in right now.
Speaking of rental prices jumping up, guys, I saw a posting on Facebook this week for a three-bedroom bungalow house in Chattagee. I saw it because I live in Chattagee, two bathrooms. So that's exactly the kind of house that I have. And the rental price was $2,400 a month. And, if you lived in Montreal renting a three-bedroom, two-bathroom house for 2,400, wow, that's a great deal. The people in Chattagee were freaking out, commenting onto this post, where the point where the owner eventually took his post down altogether because there were so many negative comments. But I imagine that the person who's renting this house out, their mortgage is probably around $2,400 a month if you were considering current home prices. So, you have to consider that when you're renting an apartment or a house. It's not just what you think is fair, it's what the market dictates is fair, right?
I mean, you
Well, the
say
real
this right
challenge
now,
on
and
that.
sorry, I just want to make a comment on that. Here last year, we rented out a townhouse that had one bathroom, three bedrooms upstairs, driveway parking, no garage for $2,000 in Chateauguay. So the reality is that price is not at all crazy for that type of a home. That's the reality of where rental rates are at. I know it's scary to a lot of people right now, but that is the reality of our real estate market, and that's why you're hearing a lot of people taking to the news and in outrage.
Well, I think the biggest issue is that a lot of people signed for their mortgages during COVID when we saw interest rates at an all-time low, and now they're up for renewal, and the renewals are at 30-40% higher in terms of how much it costs them on a monthly basis. So if you're operating rental properties and you've got the opportunity to increase your rent to cover off the increase in your mortgage, you're going to push it on to the renter.
Now, I also read an article this week about banks saying they're seeing mortgage risks easing. Instead, they're focusing more on some of the political uncertainties that we went over. Now, when we say mortgage risks are easing, what does that even mean, Martin?
Well, I think that if at the end of the day, you're always going to prioritize where you live. And so what we're seeing right now is we're seeing a lot of people coming to us looking to refinance their homes, to pull some equity out, to pay down um, high interest loans such as credit cards and lines of credit and HELOCs. But they're very conscientious and very prudent about paying their mortgages. The other thing that we're seeing is people looking to stretch out their amortization. So let's say they've got 15 years left on their loan. They're coming to us and say, listen, I need to recalibrate. I need to lower my monthly payments. Can we amortize over 30 years? Which obviously will delay them actually owning their homes for another 15 years if they only have 15 years left. But people are protecting where they live, and what's suffering a little bit more are car payments and credit card payments and so on and so forth. But what they're doing is they're addressing that by pulling out equity in their homes. So it's tough out there because everything is expensive. And before we came onto the show, it was a very expensive Christmas. I mean, we went out for dinner a couple nights, and when I got my credit card bill at the end of it, for 4 adults and 2 kids, I was blown away how much it cost. So everything is more expensive right now. And so you compound that with your mortgage going up because you signed at an all-time low during COVID and you're renewing at, 2% higher. Somewhere it's got to give because your income is not following your costs.
Speaking of rentals, if you own a complex or you've got a bunch of properties that you need help managing and you're in the market for a property manager, you should definitely check out plexdoctor.com. You can give them a call at 514-709-6397. Coming up after traffic, our property of the week, plus the answer to our trivia question. What is the name of the federal program that helps first-time homebuyers save for a down payment? We will tell you the answer after we check traffic. This is Under One Roof MTL. I'm Robyn, that's LJ, and that is Martin. We are with you until 1 p.m., your favorite part of the show, and mine. It's time for the property of the week. LJ, what do you got for us this week?
Are you looking for a smart investment or your next home? Don't miss out this incredible triplex located at 734 to 738 7th Avenue in Lachine, priced at $939,000. This renovated gem features 3 spacious units with bright interiors, private balconies, and modern appliances included. Located just steps from the scenic Lachine Canal, parks, schools, and public transit, it's perfect for families or professionals. With an annual potential revenue of $58,920,000, it's an opportunity you can't pass up. The sellers have purposely left the middle unit vacant to accommodate an owner-occupant or allow the buyers to choose their tenant. Stop by our open house today from 2 to 4 p.m. My colleague Alexandra will be more than happy to show you around the property.
LJ, what's the address again?
The address is 734 to 738 7th Avenue in Lachine.
Excellent. Okay, I also want to get to the answer to our trivia question of the week because I know there's somebody who wants some cookies from Felix and Norton. You can check them out, by the way, at the Blue Haven Shopping Center. Our question this week, what is the name of the federal program that helps first-time home buyers save for a down payment through a tax-free savings account? There are a lot of hints within that question. Almost every single word in the answer can be found in that question. The answer is a first home savings account. We also would accept an FHSA because we love acronyms in the mortgage and real estate game. Guys, let's recap what we learned this week because it was a dense show filled with a lot of very, very important content. So, first of all, I learned that interest rates are going to be very interesting to watch in 2025. It seems unanimously we are expecting rates to go down. It's just a matter of how much they will go down. Martin, when is the next interest rate announcement from the Bank of Canada?
January 29th, Wednesday at 10 a.m.
Wow. Okay, so we're going to be watching that one very closely. I always know when it's interest rate announcement day because the Under One Roof group chat blows up that morning with whatever the announcement was. Everybody sharing emojis, usually celebration in the past year anyway. Also learned this week that VTB mortgages or vendor take-back mortgages are extremely rare, but they are an option and something you should discuss with a lawyer or financial advisor if it's something that you are considering. And we also learned that political uncertainty anywhere in the world can have a direct impact on our economy here in Canada, and that includes our real estate market. So it's important, as not so fun as it is, to stay on top of what is going on in the rest of the world. Doesn't mean you have to leave, CNN on in the background all day long, but you should try to at least be a little bit aware of what is going on in the world around you. That's pretty much it for us for this week. This hour always goes by so fast. It feels way too short. I feel like we could probably do a 4-hour show every week because there's so much stuff to talk about. We will be back next Sunday, though, at 12 p.m. right here on CJD 800. In the meantime, if you want to learn more about us and the show, you can visit our website, underoneroofmtl.com. And you can also reach out to LJ, Fred, and Martin individually. LJ, where can people go to reach you?
Check out our new website that we launched in December, ljrealties.com, or on all socials with the handle Aguinaga or LJ Realties. You can also call or text me at 514-500-4040. And we also just launched the Plex Doctor website, so www.plexdr.com. So lots of new things happening. Super excited for this year. Another exciting thing that we have going on right now is that this week on Tuesday, January 14th, from 6 to 8 p.m., we will be hosting the Montreal Real Estate Meetup with the hosts from the Canadian Real Estate Podcast, Nick and Dan, who will be joining us from Toronto live in Montreal. We should have around 50 to 60 people passing by to connect, mingle, and discuss all things real estate. There's absolutely no cost to this event, so feel free to stop by. We'll be at the WeWork space located on the 5th floor of 1275 Avenue des Canadiens de Montréal, right across the street from the Bell Center. Martin and I will be present, happy to meet you as well, and discuss any questions you might have at that time. We also have parking located through the Provigo at 1050 Drummond. You can access from there or take the metro. It's the easiest way to get around. You can take the Lucien Lallier stop or the Bonaventure stop on the metro lines.
I love indoor parking in the winter because if you're someone who parks outdoors like I do, when you're parked indoors, all of the ice melts off your car. It's lovely. Another benefit in addition to going to the meetup. Martin, where can people get in touch with you and Fred?
Fredmartin.com. But I just want to give a shout out to our sponsor, Felix and On Cookies, because I was talking to Michael Eskenazi, and we hinted that he was opening more locations before Christmas. And the locations were open just before Christmas for the Christmas rush. So there's one now on Peel Street, really close to Chez Alexandre. And there's another one in Boisbriand, 2693 Rue Danas. And the locations were open just really quickly so that they could address the Christmas rush. They have closed them again to finish the renovations and to finish, and they will reopen in the coming weeks. So I just wanted to congratulate Michael Eskenazi and Phyllis and Cookies because they're now up to 3 locations, and hopefully there's a location near you. So coming back, yes, I'm going to be with LJ on Tuesday night. And to reach Fred and I, it's fredmartin.com.
Excellent. If you missed anything, you can listen to the show in its entirety on the iHeartRadio app, Spotify, Apple, or wherever you get your podcasts. For LJ, Fred, and Martin, I'm Robyn Flynn. Have a great Sunday.